Hey guys, so I want to put my story out there talking about my experience in the mainstream medical system, my history with chronic illness, how I had to overcome certain chronic health issues, getting better, getting worse, getting better again, as well as I want to talk about how poor regulatory measures and bad science in mainstream medicine made me sick at an early age, which has caused and contributed to residual health effects and consequences throughout my life. I experienced doctor malpractice due to the poor science and true science being ignored, as well as just misdiagnosis and just flat out poor treatment from doctors, as well as I experience a lot of the political side of the medical system that a lot of people don't get to see. Ultimately, my poor experience in the mainstream medical system, contrasted with my good experience in the functional medical system, has led me to wanting to create a platform where I can share and educate people on the types of things that do happen like this, as well as share the knowledge I've learned through my treatment course in functional medicine, true health science that mainstream medicine just does not acknowledge. One thing I kind of want people to get out of this video is to be an advocate for your own health. That's something that I think is very important, is that people start to become educated on the topic of health, as well as knowing your own health. Like, know your health, know how you feel, so that you can develop a certain level of discernment to make the right choices in the right times to protect your health and not be pressured by fear into bad science so that you can avoid bad science. So I'll continue by just telling my story, starting off with grade 6 middle school. I was a very strong athlete. I played basketball, soccer, volleyball. I was very coordinated. I was good at running. I loved to run. I was very fast. I was in track and field. And just running down the basketball court one day, I became short of breath. I started seeing stars. And I had this dizzy spell, and it brought me to my knees. And this was kind of a reoccurring episode that would happen every once in a while. It would come and go, where I'd have these weird neurological symptoms spontaneously occur, and it would freak me out really bad. I also started having frequent illnesses. I would have like colds and flus more frequently than other people would, as well as I started having gastrointestinal issues, so pain in my stomach and digestion issues and stuff like that. And so I started seeing a doctor in mainstream medicine that my mom brought me to after frequent complaints. And this doctor couldn't provide a resolution to what was going on. He blamed it on a virus and said, "Oh, a virus is probably attacking you. It might go away in 6 months or something like that." So his prognosis was very vague, and he didn't do his due diligence. He didn't run tests like he was supposed to. Essentially just didn't take me serious. And this was kind of like a reoccurring thing that would happen with him whenever I went to go see him, complaining about the issue still being a problem or a new issue coming up. So high school came with new symptoms and new issues. I started developing sleep problems, like insomnia. There was just days where I would not sleep. I had cognition issues. Overall, I just wasn't learning properly, couldn't retain new information properly. I had brain fog. My brain would just spontaneously shut down, even though I did have that information learned, as well as just overall low energy, as well as chronic fatigue syndrome symptoms started occurring. So burning muscles, fatigue in my muscles after not even exerting myself, chronic muscle pain became an issue. My muscles in spontaneous places would just start aching, as well as frequent headaches. Migraines would happen once in a while, as well as anxiety and mood issues started to develop. So overall, I just was not a functioning person. I could not do what I was in high school to do, learn and develop my abilities and my skills. Throughout high school, it got progressively worse, and the symptom list continued to grow, but my doctor constantly reassured me that I was fine and that there was nothing wrong with me. So I would attempt to move on with my life and ignore my symptoms, when in reality I knew that there was something seriously wrong and I needed answers. This would eventually lead me back to my doctor and cause him to be frustrated with me, and even flat out calling me a liar and saying that I was faking it, and that there was nothing wrong with me and everything that I was saying was made up, and even flat out telling my parents that I was faking it so that I could skip school. This was a constant reoccurring experience that I had in the medical industry, in mainstream medicine, with healthcare professionals attempting to find answers and resolution to my health issues and what I was experiencing and what I was going through. This led to a very huge distrust in doctors at an early age, when the very person you expect to have your best interest in mind instead is very critical of you. It creates a lot of issues regarding finding answers and not being able to trust the medical system. I was still playing soccer through high school, but I wasn't necessarily getting better at the sport like I should have been. In a lot of situations, my body wasn't coordinating with what my brain wanted it to do anymore. I had deteriorating coordination, which frustrated my team as well as myself. I was super frustrated because I was just watching my body self-destruct in front of me, and there was nothing I felt I could do. I felt like I did everything I was supposed to, which was trust in the doctors and tell them what was going on and just wait for answers, and it's like they didn't take me serious, or they couldn't find the answers, or they just weren't educated on what to look for. And so I knew something was wrong, and I just continued to kind of deal with it. And it was scary having these episodes where I would just become short of breath and oxygen deprived or whatever it was, and have this dizziness, and I'd fall to the ground and everything would spin and the ground would warp, and I would just have to sit there and wait it out. Started having other symptoms like heart palpitations and chest pain when I ran or exercised, as well as involuntary muscle twitches and cramping in my legs and my feet. Stuttering, stammering became a problem. I couldn't communicate, couldn't get the words out that I wanted to say, couldn't socialize because of this. Had a lot of awkward moments because of the stuttering, stammering issue. Just overall wasn't a good experience watching my health and my body deteriorate throughout my development years in high school. I stayed determined, though, attempting to make my concerns known, that the problems I was facing were very real. It didn't make sense that I was such a strong athlete before, and now my health was deteriorating. I knew something was wrong, and I stuck to it. And because of that determination, my parents believed me, and they stuck with me, despite the negative, critical statements and comments the doctors made, and their inability to find answers for why I was having these health issues. My parents ended up taking me to a new doctor in private functional holistic medicine when I was 17 years old. This doctor has been my doctor for over a decade now, and I've had very good results with him. He's recovered me from multiple health issues over the course of over a decade, from residual health effects and everything that I've kind of experienced through my health journey. I stuck to playing soccer and other physical activities because it was my way of dealing with everything mentally and coping with my deteriorating health and all of the other problems that I had to sort out through high school. Grade 11 was my last year of school as a teenager because of this. I ended up overexerting myself with too much physical activity when I already had major unresolved health issues going on. I went from having trouble sleeping to now sleeping over 10 to 12 hours a day, drained of energy. I wasn't able to do much, and I became bedridden. I moved to a new state of chronic illness, one that I wasn't going to recover from right away. My doctor told me it was time to start full-time extensive treatment and diagnosed me with Lyme disease. He informed me that I would not be returning to school right away. I spent the next year or so essentially hooked up to an IV, and I was prescribed a list of medications and supplements that I had to take daily. I was told that at my sickest point, I had to be sit up and fed, and that I wasn't very coherent. I spent an awful amount of time sleeping now, whereas before I couldn't sleep at all. I'd have to get dragged out of bed, driven to the clinic, where I'd spend a day hooked up to a nutrient IV. Overall, I just was not a functioning person, and I was drained of energy and life. But eventually, the treatment started working, and I had improvements. The doctor I had in private functional medicine was very good. He was very experienced and very knowledgeable to be able to treat me with the issues that I was dealing with. As I improved, I took on the role of self-education, and I started reading anything medical related that I could gain access to. My doctor really taught me how to think for myself and pushed the idea of being an advocate for my own health. He would tell me to go read certain pieces of health science, and I would go and do it, and he had a lot of access to medical literature that a lot of doctors don't have access to, and so he would tell me to go read that stuff, or he would give it to me and I'd go and read it. So I spent a lot of time studying and reading medical literature in functional medicine and books written by doctors in the field of functional medicine and holistic medicine. Although improvements were made, I could never fully recover, and I instead relapsed in 2013 at 21 years old. This was due to the large amount of persistent toxic heavy metal mercury in my system. I had a large amount of mercury and other toxic heavy metals in my body that had gone undetected since childhood. I had very scary symptoms at this point in time in 2013. I had hyperactive autoimmune type reactions. My body was essentially rejecting the food, rejecting the supplements, rejecting the treatment. I had anaphylactic type reactions to my foods, and I was scared to eat. I also had peripheral neuropathy, burning in my hands and feet. I had extreme numbness where I couldn't feel my body, and then it would switch to pain, and then it would switch back to numbness. I had deteriorating vision. I had involuntary muscle twitches and full body jolts where it would feel like I was getting electrocuted, as well as I had trouble sleeping, insomnia, night terrors, extreme nightmares, and overall just very traumatic symptoms that were very scary at that point in time. I spent a lot of time studying and reading still, determined to find answers of what was going on with my health. I felt like the numbness played a key role in what was going on, and I was looking in that direction. I remembered studying and reading literature on heavy metals and toxicity of mercury, but I couldn't confirm its role in my health at this point in time. I was rejecting the treatment and no longer responding to it, so my doctor decided that it was time to send me to a new doctor, a new clinic in Dallas, Texas. This clinic specializes in immunotherapy, detoxification, and further diagnostic criteria. This new clinic in Dallas, Texas is where we discovered the large amount of toxic heavy metals and mercury in my system. I also went through further extensive diagnostics to determine other factors that might be playing a role in my deteriorating health. The heavy metals and mercury are what stood out as the most significant factor, and we tackled that first. I went through extensive immunotherapy by determining my allergies and sensitivities to foods, supplements, IV ingredients, and even medications, to create allergy shots to downregulate my immune system from a hyperactive state. I went through chelation therapy through IVs to excrete the heavy metals and the mercury, and I also went through nutritional IVs and reintroduced new supplements to promote healing and resolve nutritional deficiencies. So my main treatment course now consisted of chelation therapy, which was done intravenously with a sulfur compound called DMPS. This compound creates a very strong bond with heavy metals and mercury. This treatment can also be very harsh and aggressive on the system if it's done intravenously, which is actually necessary for this situation because of the large amount of mercury and heavy metals I had in my system. I also started new supplements and continued with nutritional IVs to promote healing after the harsh treatment, as well as promote healing in nutritional deficiencies and inflammation balance. I also continued with immunotherapy, desensitization, allergy shots to foods, supplements, IV ingredients, and even pharmaceutical medications. I also did glutathione IVs to help support the detoxification system, which is very important for heavy metal toxicity and mercury toxicity. I spent 3 months in Dallas, Texas, focused on full-time treatment, and when I was done, I came out a new person. I wasn't fully recovered or healed yet, but I was healing, and it gave me hope in moving forward. Due to financials, I had to come home early from the special clinic in Dallas, Texas before my treatment was complete. This is where a lot of the political aspects of my story come in. We were in contact with the government requesting funding for my treatment initially, as well as to complete my treatment, and we kept on getting denied. This was due to my treatment protocols by my doctors not being recognized as proven therapies through healthcare, mainstream medicine, and insurance. These proven therapies and treatments were simply labeled as unproven, and I was denied access to funding. My family had been in direct contact with the government for many years regarding my health, and now that we had a proven therapy or a therapy and treatment that I was responding to and healing from, we still weren't able to be granted access to funding and had no approval. This caused me to go without treatment and my chelation therapy for many months. So the following year in the summer, I started playing soccer again. I was struggling, but I was playing again. And I started thinking about going back to school and taking classes, so I was well enough to start thinking about my future and finishing my schooling and doing everything that I wanted to do. I pursued the idea of healthcare because of all the experience I had in the health industry and all the things that I kind of went through. Nutrition was a big thing for me at that point, and I studied a lot of it, and it really played a huge role in my life, so that's kind of the area that I kind of was looking forward to, as well as orthomolecular nutrition, so studying supplements and using supplements to my advantage to promote healing and healthcare. So that's most of my story right there. I ended up having other health issues later on when I went back to school in the following years, just due to unresolved other health issues that were caused by residual health effects and consequences of what I went through. I attribute my health success to functional medicine, nutrition, and orthomolecular nutrition, and my doctor in functional medicine who refused to give up and was able to treat me and listen to me and educate me on these health issues and everything that I need to know. He encouraged me to self-educate, and that's something that I'm very thankful for as well. As well as I attribute a lot of my health success to being informed and knowledgeable about toxicity. That's something that a lot of people don't know about, is chronic toxicity plays a huge role in people's biochemistry and the illness development stage and disease process. Chronic toxicity can play a huge role in people having health issues, and that's something that's very overlooked by mainstream medicine and other doctors that don't really have education or knowledge on that type of topic. I wanted to put my story out there to get people just kind of thinking about their health and the types of issues that do happen out there. There's a lot that people need to be aware of, and there's a lot that people need to consider to be able to protect their health so that they don't experience bad science. A lot of this bad science is very industry driven, and that is why it is bad science, because a lot of the important science is swept under the rug and not acknowledged because there's not a lot of money in it. So the way to avoid this bad science is people need to start being educated about their health and the types of things that they need to avoid, such as toxicity, their daily exposure, the types of things that can make you sick that you aren't really taught, especially when mainstream medicine doesn't acknowledge chronic toxicity as a probable issue that causes health issues. People really need to start being aware of this and start educating themselves on the topics such as this. Another issue that became apparent to me in mainstream medicine is that doctors will approach their patients and treat their patients with a one-size-fits-all approach. And I can tell you from experience, most definitely, there is not and never will be a one-size-fits-all. This is especially an issue because doctors in mainstream medicine and allopathic medicine don't even acknowledge the factors of epigenetics, chronic toxicity, chronic infections, and nutrition as plausible factors for causing disease and making people sick. This is the reason mainstream medicine could never find an answer or resolution to why I was sick. The very factors that were making me sick aren't even acknowledged as plausible factors in mainstream medicine for causing illness. Chronic toxicity played a major role in my specific situation where I was sick with heavy metal toxicity and mercury. This is because I had a medical procedure done in dentistry at an early age where mercury amalgam fillings were put into my mouth, which made me sick. So industry-driven science influenced by poor regulatory measures allowed this horrible procedure to take place that eventually made me sick. My story is one example of many, and there's lots of examples in the past too, where people suffer or are made sick due to bad science or industry-driven science. So I wanted to put my story out there, showing people that these types of situations and events still happen, and that this is still an issue even in present day. The most important thing is that people become educated and informed and rely on informed consent, especially when doing a medical procedure, and just educate yourself on health in general. So it's up to everyone to be an advocate for their own health, to be aware of these types of things that do happen in mainstream science, mainstream medicine, where everything is kind of influenced heavily by industry-driven science. Thanks for listening. Please share the video. Take care. God bless. Thanks.